This is a video about yo-yos and why looping is so hard. The yo-yo is an ancient toy with records of existence since 500 BC in ancient Greece. However, to most people, it's a nostalgic toy reminiscent of the 1990s, when yo-yos were at its peak popularity, falling off until the 2010s. In the smartphone era, kids today no longer play with yo-yos. However, yo-yos still make frequent appearances in pop culture, evoking a sense of nostalgia for kids who have never played with a yo-yo. Now, the physics of a yo-yo is fairly simple. To any physicist, it is nothing more but a mass on a string. The throwing of the yo-yo converts translational kinetic energy into rotational kinetic energy. When the user pulls up, additional friction is created between the string and the gap of the yo-yo. This causes the friction experienced by the yo-yo to increase, converting rotational energy back into potential energy. Today, the yo-yo community has a resurgence due to TikTok and social media. Competitive yo-yo is played at 5 different levels, or 5 different styles, with 5 different divisions of play. These are 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A, and 5A. The yo-yo can be responsive or unresponsive. When I pull up, the yo-yo responds immediately. This is an example of a responsive yo-yo where the yo-yo comes back to me. These are accompanied by imperial or flat design. Unresponsive yo-yo, on the other hand, does not pull up when I tug on the string, hence the name unresponsive. They are often accompanied by a butterfly design. They look like this. 1A or string tricks. 1A is the simplest division to understand and watch. The elements the user has access to are the string and an unresponsive yo-yo. This division is sometimes called string trick. 2A or looping. The second division to be invented after 1A is 2A. This is where the user has one responsive yo-yo in each hand. The majority of the tricks are looping style tricks. This is the only competitive division that uses a responsive yo-yo. 3A or two-handed. The third division to be invented is 3A. This is like in 1A and 2A, but the user now has access to 2 unresponsive yo-yos. 4A, off-string. The fourth division to be invented is 4A. Unlike any of the other styles, in off-string play we have an unresponsive yo-yo in addition to the string not being connected to the yo-yo. This opens up new tricks like aerials or multiple yo-yos, like the legendary solo hand. 5A or counterweight. 5A is a fairly recent style involving a counterweight. Here, instead of having the string tied to your hand, it is tied to a counterweight, which is attached to one end of the 1A unresponsive yo-yo. If the user never lets go of the counterweight, we reduce down to 1A style play. This opens up new style. The trick of 5A is to use the counterweight in creative directions, combining the string tricks of 1A, manipulating 2 objects like in 3A, aerials like in 4A. Because of this, 5A is very popular. To be a good player, you have to be good at both technique and consistency. In 1A, because each move is executed in order, players often learn technique before consistency. However, in 2A, the classic trick Loop the Loop must be fully mastered on both hands as a prerequisite before learning any other trick in 2A. This means that Loop the Loop is the gatekeeper that opens up the division. So looping is incredibly frustrating and more difficult than it looks. The string can snag, the throw can spiral out of control, and because of this, 2A players have the inverse problem, learning consistency before technique. However, both consistency and technique is important to mature as a player. For the remainder of the video, I want to investigate what it is that makes 2A so difficult. Reading comments online, 2A is significantly more difficult than the other styles, and often considered significantly harder than the other styles. People often say that to learn 2A, you must undergo a spiritual awakening in which one day you suddenly understand how to loop with 2 yo-yos. This means that looping is unlike any other skill. To loop properly, you must throw the yo-yo and loop while the yo-yo is coming at you. The difficulty is that at that moment, you either succeed or fail, with few in between. There isn't really any time to think and assess the situation. The difference is that in 1A, you execute a series of instructions compared to 2A, which is more like performing a backflip. The main difficulty of this case is the fear of failure and the little to no indicators that you're on the right track. Weeks and months can go by with seemingly little progress, and with some miracle, you wake up and you find yourself a looping god. From a person who has practiced for 1.5 months, I can say that the actual skill is not hard, and it turns out that the difficulty is all mental, and maybe even a little bit more philosophical. Now I want to talk more about this idea of following instructions like in 1A versus conquering fear like in 2A. As I transition out of university and I find myself in the real world, there is increasingly less guidance over what to do. School is linear. You show up to school, you do the assignments, you show up to office hours, you study the night before, and you get a good night's sleep, and then you do the exam. There's a set of tasks that you must do in order to get a high grade. You can succeed in most classes simply by following the right instructions. and the best student on paper is the best instructions follower. The threat of failure is never explored as the risk to GPA is too high. Even when you work at a company, all it takes to impress the boss is to simply follow the instructions. However, I'm actually quite against this idea of good grades equals following instructions. The reason is that following instructions, well, minimizes the risk of failure. According to the scientific method, theories and hypotheses must be tested in order to yield results. Science, then, is the iterative process of theory and experiment. Positive results don't improve the theory as well as negative results do. When we run away from failure, we fall victim to perfectionism, the mindset that is detrimental to personal growth and instead keeping the status quo. Things have to be a certain way because of fear or judgment by friends or family. In the modern age, perfectionism is only further propagated by social media, leading to a disconnect between social media and reality. This is why success is actually failure in disguise. When you fail to do something, this maximizes the learning, whereas when you succeed, it minimizes the learning and just confirms something that you already know. You haven't learned a single thing. As Henry Ford once said, the only real mistake is the one from which we learn nothing. Or as attributed to Thomas Edison, I have not failed, I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. Back to the yo-yo. Teaching someone how to loop with a yo-yo is incredibly difficult. There are no instructions, and if the instructions existed, it would be incredibly specific as there are too many variables. The tension of the string, the position and momentum of the yo-yo, the exact forces exerted on and by your hand. It's so complicated, physicists don't even want to think about the Lagrangian of that system. There simply isn't any instructions or any tutorials on how to teach this skill. It's an unteachable skill. No one can teach you how to loop, you have to figure it out yourself. In fact, I would say that it's impossible to learn looping without throwing a bad throw. This confrontation can be incredibly frustrating, but a necessary part of the journey. This doesn't mean that looping is impossible. Eventually, if you were to throw the yo-yo in every possible configuration, you would be able to loop simply by exhausting all the possibilities. There's a finite number of ways to throw the yo-yo and a finite number of ways to move the finger. So through the process of theory and experiment, you would eventually converge to the optimal solution just by feedback of the results. By making micro adjustments on the throw, the string, your fingers, your hand, you would eventually learn the skill. This is how you can learn an unteachable skill, through the long iterative process of the scientific method. By eliminating throw configurations that lead to failures and testing hypotheses that lead to successful loops, we are able to generalize. Thus, learning is not simply following instructions, but rather the ability to generalize, which this in turn teaches critical thinking.
快打我现在还是不行。哎，可以。可以没 ？Let's go.
In conclusion, the difficulty of an unteachable skill like looping is the anxiety of exploring unknown territory. It involves confronting fear and becoming comfortable with failure. When we embrace failure, we give ourselves the opportunity to improve. Each failure is an opportunity to iterate on our hypothesis, and eventually we succeed. When we run away from failure, we might just trap ourselves in a loop. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to share this video and be sure to smash the like button. Subscribe for more content, and I'll see you next time. Bye.